Well, I hate to say a toe-to-so, but a toe-to-so. I effing a toe-to-so. Well, I didn't tell you anything, but Mike Augello certainly warned us that the Boston Bruins would be a handful for the Maple Leafs, and so far, he's been spot on. The Bruins a 7-3 winner over the Maple Brothers in Boston last night, going up 2-0 in this first-round Stanley Cup playoff series. It does not look good from the Maple Leafs' perspective. Is it over? Do you think it's over? Are the Bruins going to come back to Toronto and just wipe the floor with the Leafs and send Lou and the crew back to the drawing board? I don't believe that's the case. I don't know what Mike Augello feels like, but we're going to find out. The Leafs Convo, the day after the Game 2 loss, coming up in seconds. Wow, what an icy morning all the way from London, Ontario to Buffalo, New York. And you know what? It's fitting considering how icy it is in Leafland this morning. Good morning, Mike Augello.
Good morning, Norman. Yes, it is not a good state of mind for Leafs Nation right now after two games in Boston. They were, I think, thoroughly dominated in both games. Coming back to play at the ACC tomorrow, down 2-0 in the series. And, I don't think you can really sugarcoat it when you say, or be optimistic about anything. And I think they were, the game one was close for a while, but Boston pulled away and sent a message in the third period of that game. And in game two, it was 4-0 before they could really, get settled. Frederick Anderson gets pulled. And now, I think they have to show what they're made of, down 2-0, and if they don't, then this is going to be a pretty quick series.
What bothers me more than not knowing what to expect is that this Boston Bruins prowess and what they were going to bring to you was forecast. How come Mike Babcock couldn't draw up a plan to have his team be ready to, if not counteract that, at least defend against that? It looked like a complete debacle. This team makes that 2013 Randy Carlyle team look like the Edmonton Oilers of the 80s. Seriously.
Well, and remember, not to go back to rehash 2013, but remember what that team had on the fourth line. And people will make fun of it, and the analytics and aficionados will make fun of it. But when Boston pushed, you had Colton Orr and at times Fraser McLaren. Komarov was a fourth liner, a younger, faster Komarov. There was some. Dion Phaneuf was a tough guy on the blue line. There was some pushback there. There's not a lot of pushback on this team. They're a skill team. They're a speed team, and that was the tactic. That was the thought of Mike Babcock going into this series, that you would have to combat, the more physical, more experienced Bruins with the speed and offensive ability of the Leafs. Speed on the blue line for the most part. And through two games, I think the Bruins have effectively run the Leafs through the back of the rink. They've, Mitch Marner, I think he's been able to fight through as much as he possibly can, but he's being abused by the Bruins forwards. He's been hit a number of times. He's, that initiated the Kadri hit on Tommy Wingels. And yesterday, I thought the most disturbing part of that game was him getting hit in I think it was in the first period in the corner with a forearm shiver, and Ron Hainsey had to come to his defense. And when that turned around, Hainsey gets a double minor for roughing. The Boston player gets a single minor, and 11 seconds into the power play, they score. The Leafs, they have to stick up for each other, and right now, it's just not happening.
Good play begets puck luck, and Boston Bruins have had it in spades. They've run the table with the Maple Leafs, and to be honest with you, the Leafs don't look like they belong in the same rink as these Bruins. To my original point, we knew this was coming, and still the Maple Leafs have found no way to defend against it. Back to Toronto for Game 3 on Monday night. What do the Maple Leafs do to, set the tone? And the follow-up question is, how does home ice work for the Maple Leafs in terms of an advantage, if at all?
Well, home ice obviously is the last change, but with the Kadri suspension, I think that the tactic, if Kadri had been in the lineup for Game 3, would be to match up Kadri against the Bergeron line, to stack up the veterans. But now Komarov is probably out for Game 3. Kadri is suspended. So I don't know what, I would assume Babcock wants to get Matthews away from Bergeron because the Bergeron line is pretty much shut down Matthews and Nylander. Maybe they do what they did at certain points yesterday. They moved Nylander down to the second line center between Hyman and Nylander, or Hyman and Marner, to create a second unit, and then he had Marlowe with Kapanen and Matthews as a first line. I mean, that may have been just a temporary thing just to shake things up, but now you're without a grizzled veteran in Komarov, who looks like he re-injured the leg injury that he had in Buffalo last month, and Kadri is out. If you keep Marlowe in the middle, I don't think Marlowe versus Bergeron is a good matchup. And I also don't think that they should put Thomas Buchanan's in the lineup because he's been a complete non-factor, or should I say a negative factor, because he was pretty much responsible for the Pasternak goal in Game 1. I would put Dominic Moore in there. I think you need Dominic Moore to penalty kill. And I think you find a way to get Matt Martin in the lineup, because at least he would be a deterrent to the Bruins forwards who decide they want to take a run at Marner. If you take a run at Marner, I will take a run at Marchand, or I will take a run at Pasternak. You fight fire with fire.
It's amazing how we laud skill, we want skill, we praise skill, we think skill is the 100% name of the game. But when you get to the tournament where, every shift matters and every loss is one loss closer to your elimination, skill is one component of what you need to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And you need more than skill. You need more than skill. You need that grit. You need that experience. You need players who are going to be in your face beyond, what the analytics guys say, and God bless them. But you need more than that. And the Maple Leafs have skill in spades. Do they have enough to get to that next level and make a run for a Stanley Cup? I thought they did, but after these first two games in Boston, they have looked terrible, and the Boston Bruins have proved why. They have the pedigree, and who knows? Maybe this Boston Bruins team sweeps the Leafs and goes all the way to the Stanley Cup final, because they've looked absolutely impressive. They've had the puck luck. They've had the home ice advantage. They've had the momentum, and so far so good for them. The Maple Leafs, I hope Mike Babcock and the crew right now are looking at themselves with some self-effacing, inward-looking elements that need to be addressed right now and make these decisions, because if you fall down in this series 3-0, forget about it. If you do win Monday, then we can all take a collective breath and plan for Game 4. But as of right now, I don't see any reason why the Maple Leafs are looking like they can do anything positive in this series, because they haven't proved to me that they can.
Well, a team that can win a Stanley Cup has to be diversified. It can't just simply be a skill team. If you look at the Penguins, if you look at the Blackhawks, if you look at the Kings, they had skill. They also had size. They also had grit. They had toughness. They had great goaltending. It was a number of things to make that team complete. The Leafs, I think they have the goaltender, although Freddie Anderson hasn't played well. I think they have the skill. They don't really have a ton of experience other than Patrick Marleau, and they don't have really any grit and very little toughness. And what I'm talking about is not like goons, not like guys like Matt Martin who are fourth liners. You need toughness in your top six, and they really don't have that. And maybe guys like Matthews, as they get older and they get stronger, that edge will come to their game. But right now, they can't compete against the number one line of the Bruins. They've scored 20 points in this series. Marchand just runs completely amok. He can do basically anything he wants. And I remember a little bit of a story back in '93, and I referenced 1993 last year because or last night because they lost the first two games by wide margins against Detroit in that series, and then came back and won in 7. The difference is that team, that '93 team, was a bunch of grizzled veterans, Gilmore and Clark and Andrewchuk, et cetera, and this team doesn't have that experience. But in the conference final against Washington, Marty McSorley and a couple others were going at Doug Gilmore, and apparently, according to the legend, Wendell Clark went up to McSorley or one of the Kings and says, "You keep going against Gilmore, I'm going to take out Gretzky." And maybe that's archaic and Neanderthal, but you know what? I'm sorry. Right now, if they keep running Marner, then I think Matt Martin's got to go up to somebody and says, "You keep running Martin, I'm going to run Pasternak, or I'm going to run Bergeron. Maybe that works. Maybe that doesn't work. But right now, I think that's the only answer.
Mike Babcock has to know that's how the game is played. Brendan Shanahan knows that's how the game is played at this time of the season. Lou Lamoriello knows that's how the game is played. Kyle Dubas probably doesn't know that, but the guys with experience know that. Guys who have Stanley Cup rings know that. So why aren't they doing that? And clearly we know they just don't have the personnel. You tweeted out some pictures last night. Your Twitter feed was great last night, Mike, by the way. And at Mike in Buffalo, fantastic stuff. Almost 12,000 followers. You deserve every one of them. You tweeted out some pictures of Lou Lamoriello, and you asked the question, what do you think Lou's thinking right now? So I'll ask you right here on the Leafs Convo. What do you think Lou is thinking?
Well, I think he's thinking, do we have any answers in this series? I mean, I'm sure Lou is looking forward to the offseason and what can be done. One thing I have to say, based on the first two games, it looks like James Van Riemsdyk is already an unrestricted free agent. Now other than one hit against Zdeno Chara, he's been almost a complete non-factor. Yeah. I think he has to be more of a factor on the power play. The Leafs need to score on special teams, and he's a big part of that. But he's really not played too well, and he's had a history of being very successful in the postseason. But I mean, I'm sure, and as I wrote yesterday, the Achilles heel of this team is their defense. They have come up really small in the first two games. Hainsey was on the ice for the first three goals on Thursday. Nikita Zaitsev looks out to lunch right now. I don't think he's ever recovered from the broken foot. He looks slow. He looks tentative. He was on the ice for 4 goals. Gardner gave away a couple yesterday, but Morgan Riley has played, I think, his worst hockey of his career. I mean, their defense is not playing well. And honestly, I don't think this team is winning a Stanley Cup in the next 4 or 5 years unless they go out and get that number one defenseman. And if you have to overpay to get him, you're going to have to overpay to get him. But you're not going to win. You know, Pittsburgh won without Letang. They won, but they had Crosby and Malkin. Yeah. You have to have a Duncan Keith or a Drew Doughty to win a Stanley Cup. And right now the Leafs don't have that.
This is The Conversation. Mike Augello in Buffalo, New York. Norm James in London, Ontario. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We're getting more listeners, more hits, more clicks, more views every time Mike and I collab for one of these conversations. We appreciate the support you give us. In turn, we are going to provide you with quality content. Unfortunately, today, that quality content really is sort of kind of mired in a depressed discussion about the Maple Leafs, but we are just dealing with reality here, folks. The Maple Leafs did not look good in Boston, and now they come back to Toronto with their tails between their legs, hoping to find a solution to what the Bruins are throwing at them every single line that takes the ice. And again, I will make the point that I'm disappointed that the Maple Leafs knew this was coming. You knew it, and you still haven't been able to do anything about it. You'll probably be able to do some things about it in the offseason, but we're not there yet, Mike. Just a few minutes to go. Let's give Leaf fans, many of them who are, on the collective ledge, contemplating what to do today, whether to stick with it or just end it all. And I'm saying that just, in jest. But let's give Maple Leafs fans something to look forward to tomorrow night. What can we tell Leaf fans to get them to take a deep breath, maybe have some toast and marmalade, sip on a chamomile tea, relax, and prepare themselves for a Game 3 that might turn out to benefit the Leafs? Let's give them some positivity before we go.
Well, I think that this club this year has successfully bounced back every time they had a bad effort, and this is 2 in a row, and it's the playoffs, and we know that, but they've always been able to bounce back with a good effort, and they played very well at home. I think that, again, I think Mike Babcock has got to get away from. I was exchanging messages with a Boston reporter friend, and he's essentially saying, Babcock is stuck in this matchup thing with the Bruins, and on the road where you're trying to get Matthews away from Bergeron. It's tough to do. Well, he's got the last change in Toronto, and maybe whatever line he wants to get against that line, he can do that. It's just I question what line can step up and match those guys and limit them. But he's got to get Matthews and Nylander away from Bergeron to let them flourish offensively. And as we've seen, Matthews will have a game or two off, but then when he comes around, he's a force to be reckoned with. So I just think that this team has got talent. They have offensive talent. They know that their back's against the wall. They've successfully come back in those situations, and I think they can do that in Game 3.
Yeah, let's hope so. And again, if this series wraps in 4, the Maple Leafs will be embarrassed. The organization will be embarrassed. Brendan Shanahan's not going to like it. They will make adjustments, and I believe they will be even better next year through the regular season, and hopefully will take a step forward in the playoffs. And I'm already looking ahead because, remember, this team is on the road to hopefully great success. It has the foundation. We know that. Now it is time, after you have the pillars. You have the pillars in place. You have that foundation. You're moving your way up. You have to make the amendments, the alterations. You have to augment what you've got and find a way to be successful. And we've had the experience through the playoffs last year, going 6 games with the Capitals. Let's hope the Leafs can turn it around and make some forward improvements over the next however long this lasts, week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And learn from these situations of adversity. And that's basically all we're trying to do right now. And after those 2 games in Boston, my belief that this team can go deep has taken a hit. But if they go out in Game 3 and make a statement, then clearly we're going to feel a lot better. Last thing for you, Mike. In Game 3, if the Leafs eke it out 2-1, is that okay? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to see the Leafs take a stand, do something emphatic? Do something dramatic. Do you want to see this team push back, maybe get out of its element a little bit and say, you know what, Boston, you're going to beat us. We're going 7, and you're not going to win any games here in Toronto.
Right now, with the current psyche of the team, as much as Babcock wants to talk positive and just say, we need to go home, have a good meal, have some good home cooking, and turn the page. I mean, right now, it doesn't matter what kind of victory. It just matters that they get a victory in Game 3. I mean, you can send messages in Game 4 if you even the series, but right now, whatever, by hook or by crook, just shut down Boston. If you win 1-0 in overtime, that's fine. You just need to get back in the series. So any way that you can to win.
I want to see Thomas Plekanec up in the press box, and I probably don't want to see him again for the rest of the playoffs. Maybe if they get into round 2 and Mike Babcock wants to use him again, we'll see. I want Dominic Moore back out there. I'd like to see Matt Martin get in the game too. And I know the stat darlings aren't going to like that, but I don't care. There's more than stats. There's more than analytics. There's more than a spreadsheet that impacts these playoff games. Don Cherry, the old man, the old fart that everybody wants to see removed and put in a nursing home, he made the points last night on Coach's Corner, and he's correct. Anybody who's won a Stanley Cup and endured the grind of the tournament will tell you it's more than just skill that's going to win you the championship. I'm going off, Mike. What do you want to see for lineup adjustments? I know we're going a little long here, but to hell with it. It's our podcast.
I know. Grapes said that Josh Levo should be in there. I think Josh Levo is like the last forward. Okay. And not to say that I don't think Josh Levo is an NHLer, but in this situation, he's sure. Basically a skilled guy with a little more size. But I don't think that that's what they need. I think they need the grit of Martin. I think they need him as that deterrent out there. And he can lay out hits. He's not ridiculously slow. He's still a pretty decent NHL player, in spite of what other people say. I would sit Plekanec and put Dominic Moore in.
Yep.
I would consider based on the limitations and how he's played in the first 2 games. I would think about Connor Carrick to replace Zaitsev, but I'm not sure that they're going to go that far because Babcock likes Zaitsev, even though he's had a bad season. And you have to factor this into consideration. Babcock, he probably is the one who said, go out and get me Thomas Plekanec. So that may be what keeps Plekanec in the lineup in Game 3. And I hate to say that, but it's like there's no other. All I know is Babcock continues to say, I need a center, I need a center, I need a center. They go out and trade Plekanec, and he did nothing in the last part of the regular season, and he's done nothing in 2 games. But I think they're going to keep him in the lineup.
Yeah. Look, I think Plekanec's head is still in Montreal. It's not his fault. He was there for 15 years and then has to join their arch rival. He's probably past that now, but he's kind of like a deer in the headlights. And we don't need any more maple deer, Mike. The thing about hockey is if you try harder and you play with more energy and more frustration and more conviction, it can backfire, but it can also work to your advantage. It's not like baseball where you're 0 for 4 and you got a fifth at bat and you're up there gripping the bat too tight and you want to hit a home run. That doesn't work. You can't try harder at the plate. But in hockey, you can actually skate faster and hit harder and forecheck with more aggressiveness. You can actually do that. So the Maple Leafs actually can take it to another level Monday night. I'd hate to see this team get swept because it's going to be a difficult month or two after the Leafs have finally bowed out for a lot of Leaf fans who've really enjoyed a tremendous season that their team has put together. I don't think it's over yet, Mike. I'm really hoping the Maple Leafs can get a win in Game 3 and at least change the complexion of this series for a temporary period of time and hopefully longer. Stay inside, stay warm, Mike. Hopefully the worst of the ice storm has passed us. We shall see, and let's hope it thaws out a little bit for Leaf Nation going into Game 3. And who knows, maybe the Buds will come out with a victory. And oh yeah, by the way, we'll do this again tomorrow. Mike, have a good one, my friend.
Thanks, Norman.
Did we bring you any positivity whatsoever? Some glimmer of hope? Some ray of light? No? Our apologies, but let's face it, the Maple Leafs haven't given us much to work with so far. Let's just eat the fact that this is a moment of despair, but let's also prepare for the possibility that tomorrow could bring with it something that's the exact opposite, something amazing, something exhilarating, some more opportunity. That's what the playoffs are about. This Maple Leafs team does not have much experience playing at this time of the year, and us as a collective fan base, we don't have that much experience cheering and supporting a team that plays at this time of the year. We've been collectively walking through the wilderness over the past decade and a half when it comes to hockey past the end of May. But now we're here, we're learning about it together. If I had any money and were a betting man, I'd put the cash down on the Maple Leafs winning Game 3 and cutting the Bruins series lead to 2-1. Tell your friends about the Leafs Conversation. You can find this podcast where podcasts are traditionally discovered. Places like iTunes, Soundcloud, Anchor, Pocket Cast. We need your support. And if we get your support, we'll continue on for the foreseeable future. Batten down the hatches, folks, with this ice storm. Tomorrow's a new day. It's going to be a great one. We'll be back for some pregame hype. Thanks for listening. Take it easy.